There is a dream that millions of American workers carry quietly through their careers, through the long commutes and the early mornings and the years of sacrifice. And it sounds exactly like this. What if I could retire at 55? What if I could step away while I am still healthy enough to travel, active enough to enjoy the grandchildren, young enough to actually live the retirement I imagined instead of simply surviving it? It is a beautiful dream, and for a growing number of Americans, it is becoming a genuine plan. But here is what nobody is telling the people who are seriously considering it, and what I need you to hear before you make any decisions about when to walk away from your working years. Retiring at 55 sets off a chain of Social Security consequences that most people never see coming. Consequences that can quietly reduce the benefit you receive every single month for the rest of your life, sometimes by hundreds of dollars, sometimes by significantly more, depending on your specific earnings history. And those reductions do not announce themselves. They do not show up as a warning on your Social Security statement. They simply appear in your monthly check, smaller than they would have been, every month, for decades. And most people never understand why. Today, I am going to show you exactly what happens to your Social Security when you retire at 55, how the calculation works, where the gaps appear, what they cost in real dollars, and most importantly, what you can do to protect yourself regardless of when you ultimately decide to stop working. And I am saving the most powerful piece of information for later in this video, something most people approaching early retirement have never been told, something that can change the entire calculus of your retirement timing decision. Stay with me, because missing it could cost you far more than you realize. My name is Robert, and on this channel, I take the rules buried inside Social Security, Medicare, and retirement planning and put them in plain English so that you can make the decisions that are right for your actual life. Before we go any further, I want you to type your age in the comments below and tell me your biggest worry about retirement right now. Is it whether you have saved enough to retire when you want to? Is it fear about what happens to your Social Security if you stop working early? Is it prescription costs or Medicare coverage in the gap years before you turn 65? Is it the fear of running out of money before you run out of life? Tell me, because you are not alone, and what you share helps me make sure this channel keeps speaking directly to what you actually need. Let us start with a reality check that I think is genuinely important to hear, because if you are seriously planning to retire at 55, you deserve to have your ambition acknowledged before we get into the details. According to data compiled by Yahoo Finance and supported by research from the Employee Benefit Research Institute, only approximately 11% of all Americans retire between the ages of 55 and 59. 11%. If you are in that group or working toward it, you have accomplished something that the overwhelming majority of American workers never achieve. You have saved aggressively. You have planned carefully. You have made sacrifices that most people were not willing or able to make. That is worth saying clearly, because everything I am about to tell you is not meant to discourage you. It is meant to equip you. The goal is not to talk you out of retiring at 55. The goal is to make sure you understand exactly what Social Security will look like when you do, so that you can plan around it intelligently rather than be surprised by it later. Now let us build the foundation, because understanding how Social Security calculates your benefit is the key to understanding why the timing of retirement matters so much. The Social Security Administration does not simply look at how much you earned last year or even your average earnings across your entire career. They look at your 35 highest earning years, indexed for inflation, and they use those years to calculate a figure called your average indexed monthly earnings, which is abbreviated as IME. That IME then flows into a formula that determines your monthly benefit amount. The critical word in all of that is 35. Social Security uses exactly 35 years of earnings to make the calculation. Not 30, not 40, 35. And here is where the retirement at 55 conversation begins to get genuinely important. If you started working at 20 years old and worked every single year without a gap until you retired at 55, you would have exactly 35 years of earnings on record with the Social Security Administration. Your calculation would include no empty years. Every year of earnings you have would be used. But if you started working at 22 after college, or had a few years of part-time or reduced work in your 20s, or took time away from the workforce to raise children or care for a family member, you might have fewer than 35 full years of significant earnings on your record when you stop working at 55. And every year where you have no earnings reported does not simply get left out of the calculation. It gets counted as a zero. And that zero gets averaged in alongside your actual earning years to produce your AIME. Zeros drag down your average. And a lower average means a lower monthly benefit that you will receive every single month for the rest of your life. Let me make this concrete with numbers that show you exactly what is at stake. Imagine two people, both of whom earned an average of $50,000 per year across their working years. The first person has 35 full years of earnings on record when they retire at 55. The second person has only 30 full years and 5 zeros. Social Security will divide both earnings histories by 35 years to produce the AIME. For the person with 35 full years, $50,000 multiplied by 35 years equals $1.5 million in lifetime indexed earnings divided by 35, producing an annual average of $50,000. For the person with 30 years of earnings and 5 zeros, $1.5 million in lifetime indexed earnings is still divided by 35. Because the formula always uses 35, regardless of how many years you actually worked. The result is an annual average of approximately $42,800. That lower average flows into the benefit formula and produces a meaningfully smaller monthly check. Research in Social Security Administration calculators suggest this kind of difference can reduce a monthly benefit by somewhere in the range of $150 to $200 per month, depending on the specific earnings history. That might sound modest until you multiply it across the years you will receive those payments. $200 less per month is $2,400 less per year. Over 20 years of collecting benefits, that is $48,000. Over 25 years, it is $60,000. From 5 years of zeros in a calculation that most people never even knew was happening. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. Thomas is 58 years old, a project manager from Colorado who had been carefully planning to retire at 55 for the better part of a decade. He had saved aggressively, invested wisely, and genuinely had enough money to make it work. What Thomas had not done was run a careful analysis of his Social Security earnings history. When a financial counselor he met through a nonprofit senior financial education organization asked to see his Social Security statement, they discovered that Thomas had only 32 years of significant earnings on record. He had spent his early 20s in graduate school with very low reported income, and he had taken 18 months away from the workforce in his late 30s when his mother became seriously ill and needed full-time care. Those gaps, which had felt at the time like the right human decisions, were going to produce 3 zeros in his Social Security calculation. The counselor showed Thomas that working 3 more years, from 55 to 58, would replace those zeros with 3 of his highest earning years, potentially adding over $200 per month to his eventual Social Security benefit. Thomas decided to adjust his retirement target to 58. He told his wife afterward that he was not devastated by the information. He was grateful because he learned it at 55 when he could still do something about it, rather than at 67 when he could not. Now let us talk about the claiming decision itself, because retiring at 55 and claiming Social Security are 2 completely separate events, and understanding that separation is one of the most important things I can share with you today. Just because you stop working at 55 does not mean you have to claim Social Security at 55. In fact, you cannot claim Social Security retirement benefits at 55 at all, barring a disability qualification, because the earliest possible claiming age for standard retirement benefits is 62. What retiring at 55 means in practical terms is that you will have a gap, potentially a very long gap, between the day you stop receiving a paycheck and the day your Social Security benefits begin. If you retire at 55 and claim Social Security at 62, that gap is 7 years of self-funding with your savings, investments, pension, or other income sources. If you retire at 55 and delay claiming until your full retirement age of 67, that gap extends to 12 years. And if you retire at 55 and delay claiming until 70 to maximize your monthly benefit, you are self-funding for 15 full years before Social Security contributes a single dollar to your income. The length of time you can sustain yourself financially without Social Security is one of the most important variables in the entire early retirement equation, and it deserves more attention than most early retirement discussions give it. The claiming age decision carries enormous financial weight, and I want to make sure you understand exactly how the numbers work. Under current Social Security rules, your full retirement age is 67 if you were born in 1960 or later. Claiming at 62, the earliest possible age, reduces your monthly benefit to 70% of what you would have received at full retirement age. That 30% reduction is permanent. It does not go away when you hit 67. It stays with your check for life. On the other end of the spectrum, every year you delay claiming beyond your full retirement age. Your benefit grows by 8% per year through what Social Security calls delayed retirement credits. By the time you reach 70, the maximum age at which delayed credits accumulate, your monthly benefit will be 124% of your full retirement age amount. That is a 54 percentage point difference between claiming at 62 and claiming at 70. On a benefit that would have been $2,000 per month at full retirement age, that difference is over $1,000 per month, every single month, for the rest of your life. Before I get to the most important piece of information in this entire video, the one I have been building toward and the one that most people planning early retirement have never been told, I need to pause and ask you to do something. If what you are learning today is helping you think more clearly about a decision that will shape the rest of your financial life, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel right now. And stay with me, because what is coming is the piece that changes the entire picture for people who are seriously planning an early retirement, and it is something I have never heard explained clearly in any mainstream retirement planning discussion. Here is something the Social Security Administration does in its earnings calculation that most Americans have never been told, and that dramatically affects how early retirement impacts your benefit. When the Social Security Administration calculates your average indexed monthly earnings, they do not simply add up your actual dollar earnings from each year and divide. They first adjust, or index, those earlier earnings for wage inflation using a national average wage index. This indexing process is designed to account for the fact that $40,000 earned in 1990 had very different purchasing power than $40,000 earned in 2010. So the SSA applies an indexing factor to bring earlier earnings up to a more comparable value in today's terms. Here's the critical detail. Social Security indexes your earnings only up to the year you turn 60. Earnings from the year you turn 60 and beyond are taken at face value, not indexed. What this means in practical terms is that the years between your late career and age 60 tend to carry the most weight in your benefit calculation because they combine your typically higher earnings levels with the fact that they are close enough to 60, that they are only lightly indexed or not indexed at all. The years you work between 55 and 60, the exact years someone retiring at 55 would be walking away from, can be among the most valuable years in your entire earnings record for Social Security calculation purposes. Stopping at 55 means forfeiting not just the earnings themselves, but the specific positioning of those years in the calculation, a positioning that makes them particularly impactful for your benefit amount. Let me tell you about a woman named Sandra. Sandra is 63 years old, a retired healthcare administrator from Minnesota who had retired at 55 feeling confident that she had planned everything correctly. She had a comfortable investment portfolio, a small pension, and a solid Social Security earnings history going back to age 22. What Sandra did not know until she sat down with a Medicare counselor through her state health insurance assistance program at 62 was how significantly her early retirement had affected her eventual Social Security benefit. The counselor walked her through her Social Security statement and showed her that, because she had stepped away from the workforce at 55, she had missed 5 years of what would have been her highest earning years in the most impactful period of the SSA's indexing calculation. Her estimated monthly benefit was approximately $230 lower per month than it would have been if she had worked until 60. Sandra was not angry. She made the choice that was right for her life, and she stands behind it. But she told the counselor that she wished someone had shown her this analysis when she was 53, not 62, because at 53, she might have chosen to work 1 or 2 additional years to reduce the gap, and at 62, the decision was already made. The counselor also helped Sandra discover that she qualified for a Medicare savings program she had not known about, which eliminated her Part B premium and saved her over $250 every month, partially offsetting the reduction in her Social Security benefit. Sandra said that the Medicare savings program discovery felt like finding money she never knew she had lost, and that the combination of understanding her Social Security situation clearly and finding additional benefits she had not claimed gave her a level of financial clarity she had not felt since before she retired. This brings me to something I want to address directly, because for people who are planning an early retirement, the years between 55 and 65 represent a particularly vulnerable financial period. You are too young for Medicare, which does not begin until 65. You are too young for Social Security. And if your income drops significantly because you have stopped working, you may find yourself in an income range that qualifies you for benefits and programs you would never have considered during your working years. Medicare savings programs, for example, are available to people whose income and assets fall within certain thresholds, and they can eliminate Medicare Part B premiums entirely once you reach 65, saving over $2,400 per year at current rates. Extra Help, the federal program that reduces prescription drug costs under Medicare Part D, operates on similar income thresholds and can cut monthly medication costs by hundreds of dollars. SNAP food benefits, often called food stamps, are available to lower-income households, and many early retirees who have stepped down their income significantly would qualify if they knew to apply. State property tax relief programs for seniors often begin at 60 or 62 and can reduce property tax bills by hundreds or even thousands of dollars annually, depending on the state and the program. These programs exist, they are funded, and they are available, but they do not find you. You have to know they exist, and you have to apply. And for someone navigating an early retirement with a self-funding gap of 7 to 15 years before Social Security arrives, stacking these programs together can make an enormous difference in how sustainable that gap actually feels. Let me tell you about a man named Edward. Edward is 61 years old, a retired teacher from Ohio who retired at 56 with a teacher's pension, but a lower than expected Social Security benefit due to gaps in his earnings history from years of part-time work early in his career. Edward was managing the gap years between retirement and Medicare enrollment by paying for private health insurance, which was consuming nearly $800 per month of his fixed income. When a friend mentioned that Edward might qualify for assistance, he contacted his state health insurance assistance program and sat down with a counselor who walked him through his full picture. Edward discovered that his income level during retirement made him eligible for a substantial subsidy through the Affordable Care Act marketplace that he had never applied for, which reduced his monthly premium to under $150. He also discovered that he would qualify for extra help when he turned 65 and enrolled in Medicare Part D, which the counselor estimated would save him over $180 per month in prescription costs. And his county offered a property tax relief program for residents over 60 with income below a certain threshold, for which Edward qualified, saving him an additional $800 annually on his property taxes. The combined impact of 3 programs Edward had never applied for was over $8,000 per year in reduced expenses. He told the counselor that he had spent 4 years feeling financially squeezed during his early retirement and had no idea that thousands of dollars in assistance had been sitting unclaimed the entire time. So what should you actually do with all of this if you are seriously planning to retire at 55 or already have? Here is the honest, practical framework. Before you make the final decision to retire, pull up your Social Security statement at say.gov and count your years of significant earnings on record. If you have fewer than 35, every additional year you work will replace a 0 in your calculation, and the years closest to age 60 are particularly valuable. If you are sitting at 32 or 33 years, working 2 or 3 additional years could meaningfully increase the monthly benefit you receive for the rest of your life. If you already have 35 strong years and your later earnings are replacing early low earning years, additional work years can still raise your benefit by substituting higher earnings for lower ones in the calculation. Understand the self-funding gap clearly before you commit to a retirement date. Map out exactly how many years will pass between your planned retirement date and each possible Social Security claiming age, 62, 67, and 70, and calculate what your portfolio and other income sources need to deliver to sustain you through each scenario. Make sure the plan works not just in the best case, but in the realistic case and the difficult case. If you decide to retire before 65, make sure you have a clear health insurance strategy for the Medicare gap years, and investigate whether income-based subsidies are available to help with the cost. And when you reach 65 and enroll in Medicare, investigate every program you might qualify for, Medicare savings programs, extra help, and your state's specific assistance programs, before assuming that your Medicare costs are fixed and unavoidable. Here's what I most want you to carry with you from everything we have discussed today. Retiring at 55 is not a mistake. For some people, with the right financial foundation, it is the right and wonderful decision. What matters is that you make it with complete information, not partial information, not the information that confirms what you already want to do, but the full, honest picture of what it means for your Social Security benefit, your healthcare coverage, and your long-term financial security. The Social Security rules are what they are. The 35-year calculation is what it is. The indexing mechanics are what they are. But none of these rules are your enemy if you understand them clearly enough to plan around them. And none of them are impossible to address if you engage with them while you still have time to adjust your approach. You are not powerless in this. You are not at the mercy of a system that does not care about you. You are someone who showed up, who paid attention, and who now understands your situation more completely than you did an hour ago. That understanding is genuinely valuable, regardless of what age you ultimately choose to retire. You built a working life worth stepping away from on your own terms. Now let us make sure the rules work in your favor when you do.